Another Halo event is in the books as HCS Anaheim wrapped up yesterday. It was honestly the most exciting event in Halo Infinite thus far, in my opinion, and it even had 100,000 viewers while the Super Bowl was on. So that can only mean one thing. It's time to do an updated HCS Power Rankings tier list. And along the way, we're going to be talking about the teams that can potentially dethrone the champs. At this point, it's obvious that Cloud9's dominance is not going to slow down anytime soon. They are indeed the best team in Halo Infinite, and they're also the only team that I have in the S tier. They've won back-to-back LAN events now and 6 events in a row if you do count the HCS Pro Series. It is very impressive. And I think in Cloud9's current form, they remind me a lot of the Chicago Bulls. And Renegade is Michael Jordan. After a very impressive HCS Anaheim, the number 2 ranked team in Halo Infinite right now, in my opinion, is none other than OpTic Gaming. Now, I do have them in the A tier, and while they played Cloud9 very close, I wouldn't say very, but while they played them close, they're still just not on the same level. I mean, no team is, okay? It's not just OpTic. No team is on Cloud9's level right now. After a lackluster HCS rally, they bounced back and they made it to the finals at Anaheim, taking out top teams along the way, including Sentinels and eUnited, who they beat twice at Anaheim. And honestly, right now, Lucid can be argued for the best player in the game. Coming in at number 3, joining OpTic in the A tier, I have eUnited. The biggest takeaway for me is they got second at HCS Raleigh and third at Anaheim, so they've proved that they are a very consistent team, especially when it comes down to the LAN environment. And the funny thing about Anaheim for them is they only lost to OpTic all weekend long. Well, they lost to KCP in pool play, but pool play is whatever. And while it wasn't pretty, they still found a way to make it all the way to the losers finals. And Spartan has some pretty good shit talk, so that's a bonus.
They can't handle it! They can't handle it! Let's go!
The 4th best team in Halo Infinite, also in the A tier, is none other than Sentinels. Finally getting Royal 2 back for his cheating ban, it's clear that the Sentinels are under practice compared to the other teams in the HCS. But amidst all the controversy and obstacles that they've had to deal with, they now have gotten 4th at back-to-back events. One with Formal, obviously, and then one with Royal 2. And while it's clear that they aren't the dominant team that they once were, they're slowly chipping away, in my opinion, at the top teams. The 5th best team in Halo Infinite right now, and the last team in the A tier for me, is going to be FaZe. Heading into Anaheim, FaZe looked like they had the best opportunity to take Cloud9 down, honestly, in my opinion. They were playing them very close in the HCS Pro Series, which I know it's online, okay, it's not the same, but I thought that they were improving exponentially, and they were, you know, one of the favorites going into this event. And they started out hot. They went 3-0 in pools without dropping a map. And this is where I thought, okay, they're the real deal. Like, they improved a lot since Raleigh, and we're about to see what they're made of. FaZe ended up losing 2 close Game 5 series to Sentinels and eUnited, and their tournament was over with a lackluster 7/8 placing. I, for one, was shocked. I thought that they, without a doubt, were going to make a run. I thought without a doubt they would get at least top 4. And I thought there was a good chance that we would see them in the finals. And I don't know. I don't want to say they just couldn't execute when the stakes were high, but they just couldn't execute when the stakes were high. I wonder if Snipedown was daydreaming about Apex. Seriously, I do think they are a top team. It was just a rough weekend all around. I think most of them underperformed, and they'll be back. At least I hope, because I like the players on FaZe. Moving on to number 6, and this will be the first team in the B tier, but they're a very underrated team, in my opinion. And I personally love what they're about. This team is the Kansas City Pioneers. After Anaheim, KCP now has back-to-back top 6 finishes. And like I said, I'm a huge fan. I'm a KCP stan because they're the underdog team in the game right now. I love their teamwork and their unique style of play. I think it's very different from a lot of the other top teams, but they still have success. And much like FaZe, KCP started out hot. They went 3-0 in their pool, and they actually beat eUnited in pool play. Now, I know pool play and the bracket play, 2 different things, which leads me to my next point. Even though they beat them, they did fall to them later in the losers bracket, unfortunately. And I truly think they're right there to breaking into that upper echelon of teams. But the only thing I'm worried about is their potential lack of talent compared to the heavy hitters to really get them over that hump to where we could possibly see them, you know, getting top 4 consistently. Coming in at number 7 and also joining KCP in the B tier, this is a team that I think has been gradually improving, and they looked pretty damn good at Anaheim. It's going to be none other than G2. After getting 9th through 12th at Raleigh, they picked up Tusk from SSG, and they had a great performance at Anaheim, and they end up placing top 6. And while they did have an easier pool, in my opinion, than a lot of the others, I thought they played the Pioneers very close in winner's bracket. It went down to a game 5, but it was competitive, which is what you love to see, especially out of a new team. And then they ran through Oxygen and XSET before losing a relatively close series versus Sentinels in the losers bracket, ending their run. But I don't know, this team, there's just something about them. They look different with Tusk as the 4th, and I'm interested to see if they can keep improving moving forward. Who knows? They're right there in terms of also being able to break into that A tier, in my opinion, right now. Next up at number 8, and the first team that will be in my C tier, that's going to be XSET. I think XSET is a very solid team. And I think, you know, around the 8th spot in that C tier is where they belong. They obviously have a pretty outspoken team. Well, outspoken player, Kratos, if you haven't seen the interview.
There's really good players better than me at certain things, but when we put it all together, I think I'm just simply the best player to have ever played.
Anything is possible. One good round of slaves and the setup's gonna be back.
And they look good at times. You know, they look like they can compete with the top teams, but then they also just look completely lost. And it's so hard. I think their inconsistency is the main reason why I don't have them in the same tier as a team like Pioneers or G2. But who knows? Maybe they can get it under control. I want to see more Kratos interviews, if we're being honest. Then coming in at number 9, also in the C tier, this is going to be Fnatic. They looked good at Anaheim. They honestly had a very close series versus Cloud9, and then their losers bracket kind of got stopped fairly short. They look raw. They have a lot of potential. I love what this team's about. Very similar to Pioneers, in my opinion, but they're just not there. They need to figure out if they can put it together, and then we could talk about maybe moving them up to the B tier or A tier. And then we're going to speed run kind of the rest of these guys because they're just not on the same level. Well, I do have a couple in C tier as well. I have Esports Arena Red, the number 10 team, UIU, the number 11 team, and then the last team rounding out the top 12 and the C tier is Oxygen. I was surprised, man. I thought Oxygen was going to give us a better performance. They just looked flat, man. I don't know, off weekend, or maybe they are just kind of, I don't want to say regressing, but they just weren't playing up to their potential / standards, you know, in the big moment. But I still think that they're on the same tier as the rest of these teams. And then the absolute bottom of the barrel, unfortunately, respectfully to these 4 teams, but I have G1 leading the D tier off, coming in number 13, okay? Space Station coming in number 14, Complexity at 15, and Torrent, or whatever their name is, at 16. If they realistically want to make that jump into the next tier above them, I think they're gonna have to all make roster changes for at least one player. But that's my tier list. I think I'm spot on, and you can't tell me that I'm not.